This was the generation that brought us K-pop, K-drama, K-food, and many other trends that spread around the world.
No! I love Korean food! No! I didn't even think of that! No! Not KBBQ! Kyrgyzstan on South Korean birth rates?
South Korea.
I don't know how I feel about Kyrgyzstan anymore. Like, I remember their f***ing Israel piece was so ass that I was...
Is over. This sounds brutal, but South Korea...
They're too German, dude. They're just like...
...will soon start melting on all fronts. Demographically, economically, socially, culturally, and militarily. Because for decades, the country has been experiencing a fertility crisis unprecedented in human history. And we've probably reached a point of no return. By 2060, the South Korea we know and love today will no longer exist. What will the collapse look like? And why is it now almost impossible to stop? The real population bomb. To have a stable population, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1 children per woman. In the 1950s, South Koreans used to have 6 children on average. In the 1980s, the rate fell below 2. And in 2023, it was 0.72 kids per woman, the lowest ever recorded in history. In Seoul, fertility is even lower, around 0.55. On average, about half of the women here won't have any kids, and the other half just one. What do these numbers actually mean in the real world? If fertility stays as it is, then 100 South Koreans will have 36 kids. When they grow up, they will have 13 kids, who will then have 5. Within 4 generations, 100 South Koreans will turn into 5. If we look at today's South Korean population pyramid, we see this is pretty real. There's only one 1-year-old for 4 50-year-olds. After 4 decades below the replacement level, the consequences were still largely invisible. Today, South Korea's population is at an all-time high, as are its workforce and its GDP, which is still growing. But demographics hits you like a freight train. You hear it vaguely in the distance, and then it runs you over. South Korea is about to be hit. Let's time travel 35 years to the future, to 2060, and see what the country will look like then. When it comes to demographics, the most commonly used projections are those put together by the UN. They envisage 3 scenarios: low fertility, medium, and high. But in the past, all medium UN projections for South Korea have consistently been too positive. Between 2022 and 2023 alone, fertility in South Korea dropped by another 8%. So we're going to use the latest low fertility scenario, which has been the most accurate in the last few years. Keep in mind that we're still talking about projections, and the future is a faraway land. Okay, let's do it. In 2060, South Korea's population pyramid will look like this. The population will have shrunk by 30%. 16 million South Koreans will have disappeared in just 35 years. And it'll be the oldest country in human history. 1 in 2 South Koreans will be over the age of 65. Less than 1 in 10 will be under 25. And only 1 in 100 will be small children. Imagine waking up in a country where the streets are strangely quiet with no children playing on them. Entire cities have been abandoned. Half of the population is elderly and living either alone or in overcrowded retirement homes, with a minority of people desperately trying to keep society running. There will be a few major consequences. Economic collapse. In 2023, a breathtaking 40% of South Koreans over 65 lived below the poverty line, but in 2060, this number may seem lovely in comparison. Today, South Korea has one of the largest pension funds in the world, worth about 730 billion US dollars. But it's projected to stop growing in the 2040s and be completely depleted by the 2050s. So in 2060, pensions will have to be paid by the working population. Estimates vary, but for a pension system to work, the minimum a society needs is between 2 to 3 workers per retiree paying for them with their taxes. But even if we assume that all South Koreans over 15 will be working, will have less than 1 worker per senior. Workers will be unable to stem the incredible costs. So not only will poverty among the elderly be common, but a big chunk will be forced to work. Except they may not be able to find jobs because by 2060, the South Korean economy may have collapsed. Broadly speaking, the size of an economy is linked to the size of its workforce, of workers to produce a lot of things and a lot more people to buy them. Today, South Korea has about 37 million people of working age, generating a GDP of about 1.7 trillion US dollars. But by 2060, its workforce would have shrunk to less than half, to about 17 million. Of course, technological progress means that productivity will be higher and each individual will probably produce more than today. But even if productivity keeps growing at the same rate or more than we've seen in the last decades, South Korea's GDP could...
Turns out all DPRK had to do was wait. Just wait it out. That's all they had to do, you know? Yeah, do nothing, win.
...peak in the 2040s. In other words, South Korea...
This is the biggest reason why welfare/subsidies have increased here in Japan in recent years. My city, Nagoyama, has become famous as encouraging families the most with welfare. The problem is that even with all the subsidies, if you don't have time, then child raising seen is too stressful. Yeah. As long as welfare does not replace one f***ing salary, it's virtually impossible. Welfare needs to replace at least one person's income in its entirety. $5,000 is not going to do that. $5,000 a year is not going to do that. But also on top of that, we are. If we just keep doing what we've been doing, we inevitably will become, either by way of nuclear or because of climate change. Just all of these things have accelerated under capitalism, and we seemingly have no solution because we just increasingly look at short-term goals and short-term gains. It is kind of shocking how much people just go, how do we fix this? I don't know. Just got to get back to work, I guess.
...will enter a permanent economic recession. There are more optimistic projections that see the recession begin as late.
It's crazy how South Korea, as an example, would rather be and change their system. I mean, same with Japan. And also, both of these are vassal states of U.S. empire. So perhaps that's part of the reason why they're having these issues, don't you think?
...as 2050, but they're based on the medium UN demographic scenario, and there are no signs that we're heading there. Another factor in the economy is science, technology, and innovation, areas in which big leaps are typically made by young adults and the middle-aged. Young people have fresh ideas that contribute to the wealth of society. Significantly fewer people working also means way less tax for the government, which will be trapped between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, having to provide for half the population that are seniors, on the other...
They just arrested a former judge for housing a Tren-Daragua member. See, when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, maybe global population collapse isn't so bad. You know what I mean? It's just like, what are we doing, man? What the f*** are we doing?
...seeing its income diminished. It will be forced to shut down hospitals or social benefits. Since infrastructure only works at scale, smaller communities may be abandoned as the country contracts into its metropolitan areas. And of course, there won't be enough money to invest in the future. This is bad. But what will happen to South Korean society and culture may be worse. Societal and cultural collapse. Speculating on how society...
No more K-pop. No more K-pop. That's the... Here, I'll tell you, I'll summarize the worst impacts for people that care, okay? No more K-pop. No more Lisa. No more Ruby. No more Blackpink in general. Do you understand? It's going to ruin... First of all, I'm sad because, you know, I just got into manhwas, right? I just got into... what's the name of the show? God damn it. A Solo Leveling, yeah. And it's like, I don't really listen to K-pop that much, even though I've been on a Lisa kick, you know? But it's just, it's over, you know? No more Solo Leveling, dude. No more Faker. No more esports. No more professional league players.
Societies will develop is extra hard, but there are a few pretty unavoidable trends. Today, already about 20% of Koreans live alone. Also, 20% report having no close friends or relatives. By 2060, 50% of South Koreans aged 70 will have no siblings and 30% will have no children. Young adults between 25 and 35 will only make up 5% of the population and typically have no siblings at all. This leaves the elderly with almost no close family and young adults with little family and few potential friends, especially outside of big cities. A loneliness epidemic of epic proportions is all but guaranteed. On top of that...
Isn't this already happening in Korea? That's why they call it hell. what's the term for it in Korea? Hell Joseon. How do you say that? Joseon. Hell Joseon. Solo leveling is an MG-To anime. Men going their own way. I haven't heard that term in so long. Chosen. Lisa is literally Thai. I know. But K-pop, what does the K stand for in K-pop? Lisa is cringe. You take that back. All right, take a day off for that one. Okay, I'm going to unban you and give you a second off. Actually, you know what? A second is too short. 30 seconds. You know what? I've decided 1 minute long.
South Korean culture will probably experience a huge decline. In 2000, there were 17.5 million South Koreans between 25 and 45, and they made up 37% of the population. This was the generation that brought us K-pop, K-drama, K-food, and many other trends that spread around the world.
No! I love Korean food. No, I didn't even think of that. Fuck. No. Not KBBQ. Fourth time I'm in your kitchen. If I have to ask you again, I will lick your anus. I am approaching. This is the third time. Read my previous messages or I will lick your butthole. I made this. Can you look at it? And it's a Google Drive link. What the fuck? Bro, fucking. All right, well, you're fucking banned. Now what?
In 2060, there will be just 5.6 million people in that age group, and they'll only be 16% of the population. Many cultural traditions are already struggling because the older generations are having trouble finding young people to pass them on to. As young people disappear, many traditions will die out. Without young people, the soul of South Korean culture will shrink and wither away. And on a personal level, what kind of experience will it be growing up in 2060? What will youth culture be like in a country of seniors, where many universities, schools and kindergartens are abandoned as there are no longer children to fill them with life? What kind of job prospects will they face, and what will politics look like? If young people don't want to remain alone, they'll concentrate in Seoul or a few other big cities, or worse for South Korea, emigrate to other countries. Rural areas will decline, and most smaller cities will turn into ghost towns. We're already seeing this in Japan, which has almost 10 million abandoned houses in rural areas. Large parts of South Korea will simply vanish and be reclaimed by nature. Last but not least, South and North Korea are technically at war, and they could very well still be in 2060. Will South Korea still be able to afford to have its young men do 18 months of mandatory military service? Today, 5% of men of combat age are enrolled in the military. In 2060, it would have to be 15% just to match today's numbers. Okay, wait, this is all a bit much. Is there no way back? Why, there really is no way back. The problem with the demographic freight train...
Yeah, absolute, total, utter Jusha victory, dude. More optimistic views of the near socialist automated future where people have to do workcraft once every 5 years to look at the robots. A smaller population would be better. Soon we will have UBI and no billionaires. The real future starts when the first functional AI government is created. Yeah, no, definitely. AI is not going to be a mechanism to displace the existing labor force. And instead will actually create a socialist utopia. Totally, dude. Yeah, if that's the case, why isn't technological improvement right now actually lowering the burden of the existing labor force and increasing wages? Because if you look at productivity, which has skyrocketed since the fucking 80s, and then you look at wages, the wages have remained stagnant. So how did that happen? That is not a trend that I foresee. What you are saying is not even hopeful. What you're saying is like being on fucking crack cocaine, smoking on crack. You're on that. You're not even smoking that loud, okay? You're smoking that loud crack. The crack is fucking screaming. Yeah, this is what they're using AI for in Korea, for revenge porn, okay? That's what the utilization of AI looks like so far. Oh my God. LLMs can't answer how many R's are in the word strawberry in the year 2025. There's no such thing as AI government.
Is that once it hits, things become irreversible. Let's say fertility in South Korea magically triples to the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman and stays there. In 2060, it will be an inverted pyramid on top of a barrel. And there would still be only 1.5 people of working age per senior over 65. Even in the best...
Also, a full-blown AI government would instantly nuke. First of all, a full-blown AI government probably first and foremost nuke Israel, okay? And then it would nuke America, maybe simultaneously. Like, if you look at like who is doing so much of the of the consumption, who is dumping metric tons of munitions on this fucking soil, it would be over for us, okay? We would go out like that.
Made-up scenario, South Korea has to pass through an unavoidable bottleneck before it will recover. But there is also a kernel of hope here. Yes, the situation is grim, but at least in the long term, recovery is possible if South Korea enacts rapid and societal changes that make its population want to have kids again. In 2024, births rose for the first time in 9 years, 3% more than in 2023. But for that to continue, South Korea needs to face the music and ask how they got to this point. How could it get that bad? In general,
How did it get to this point? I don't know. How? I don't know. Let's see what Kyrgyzstan has to say. Considering that their framework is still going to be within the confines of capitalism, they'll probably say, oh, it's just like an extended version of capitalism, something different than like the normal good version of capitalism that we want to have.
as societies get richer, more educated, and child mortality plummets, people decide to have fewer kids. What makes South Korea special is that it's somehow supercharging all of these trends. South Korea lifted itself out of poverty in record time, but in doing so it developed a unique kind of workaholism and extreme competitiveness. Although the work week is 40 hours and the legal maximum is 52 per week, unpaid overtime is normal for many, and the government even proposed to raise legal work time to 69 hours per week. Despite this, South Korea has relatively low wages and a high cost of living. Real estate in big cities is out of reach for most people.
I mean, that's just market conditions, you know? You can't overcome that, right? I mean, excuse me, what is the suggestion here?
The cost of education is extremely high, since families have to pay for private lessons if they want to send their kids to a high-tier college. All of this while South Korea spends less on family benefits than most other rich countries. Old-fashioned cultural norms make matters even worse. Marriage is all but mandatory if a couple wants to start a family. In 2023, only 4.7% of babies were born to unmarried women. Out of all developed countries, South Korean men do just about the least share of housework and childcare within their families. This leaves women with a disproportionate amount.
Yeah, chat based. Men are working to earn a living. Women need to do the boatload of work in terms of child rearing, child care, also working a job, and also taking care of the mothers and fathers of the man too. Based. Yeah. What are they going to do? What are they supposed to do? Yeah.
Amount of work if they want to keep their jobs after a pregnancy, overwhelmed by the societal expectation to be the main breadwinner and have successful careers. Starting a family or not is a personal decision, and most South Koreans are deciding against it. The bottom line is that South Korea has created a culture that leads to very few kids.
Yeah, it's the cultural issues, man. That's what it is. Definitely. That's if they just personally fix their fucking culture, that would be, you know, everything would magically get better. Conclusion.
Demographic collapse is not an abstract thing in the future, it's happening right now. And it's not.
I love people that always say like, oh, it's just a cultural problem. It's the same thing that racists love doing too, because they can't say, like, the racists want to say the problem is like racial inferiority versus racial superiority, right? And in this circumstance, these guys are so desperate not to say it's capitalism while describing how capital accumulation and unreasonable work expectations have destroyed any Korean future generation. And he's like, oh, it's just the culture, man. It's not. It's just it's capitalism. It's my dad. He just keeps opening and closing the door.
Not just South Korea. In 2023, China had a fertility rate of 1.
I didn't hear Samsung once in this video. Was Samsung is 90% of the problem.
Italy and Spain 1.2, Germany 1.4, the UK 1.6, and the US 1.6. Which sounds so much better, doesn't it? Well, after 4 generations, a fertility rate of 1.6 means 60% fewer new people. A fertility rate of 1.2 means 87% fewer people. and fertility rates are still falling with no sign of stabilization or recovery. The weirdest thing about all of this is that almost nobody involved in the public discourse has truly grasped the gravity of the situation. The last century was utterly dominated by overpopulation narratives, and people who say that we need more kids seem weird. And if you do the maths, the future just seems to be too insane to be true, like it's hard to believe. None of this has ever happened before. So low birth rates are mostly discussed in the context of worker shortages, not as the existential threat to our societies, cultures, wealth, and our way of life that they are. If we don't take it seriously very soon and change the DNA of our modern societies in a way that encourages young people to start having children again, then the rest of the century will be pretty grim for those of us who will live through it. The demographic freight